Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm going to be getting into my 2022 5-star predictions and telling you if they were accurate or not. I posted a video at the beginning of 2022 going through every single book that I thought could be a 5-star read for me that I planned on reading this year. Now, I do have some stats before we jump in and get into the accuracy. Out of all 13 books that I predicted would be 5 stars, 3 of them I did not read. So those are gonna kind of be up in the air. It would be interesting to do one more reading vlog, getting into those and seeing if they will be 5 stars, but I'm also gonna talk about why I didn't get to them in 2022. 4 of the books on this list were not rated 5 stars, but 6 of the books on this list I actually accurately predicted. So about half of the books on this list and about 2/3 of the books that I actually got to were accurate predictions. I thought that was a pretty good statistic. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the list and I'll tell you guys which ones were accurate and which ones were not. Let's start out with horror. So at the end of 2021, going into 2022, I was still kind of figuring out my horror taste, and this book came highly recommended to me, so I said it was a 5-star prediction, and that is 12 Nights at Rotterhouse by J.W. Oker, still not quite sure on pronunciation, but I did end up reading this one this year. It follows a haunted house story. There are 2 best friends who spend 12 nights in this haunted house, and it kind of just recounts their experiences. They're very skeptical of any paranormal happenings in this house, but they quickly get proved wrong as things get increasingly scary. I thought this would be a 5-star prediction because it says on the back that the 2 main characters are obsessive horror movie fans and they're not finding the typical tropes that they know so well. And that line really stood out to me. Obviously, I'm a big horror movie fan and I kind of get sick of reading the same tropes over and over and over. So I was excited for a new take on a paranormal story and hopefully with characters that I could really relate to and feel like they're just as horror obsessed as I am. Unfortunately, that was the thing that didn't quite connect for me. I ended up rating this book 4 stars. So I definitely don't think it's a bad book. I think a lot of people will enjoy this. Number one, now I've learned over the course of 2022, haunted house stories just aren't for me. I find them pretty boring, especially when there's a character that I don't quite connect with. The male characters in this story just didn't speak in a way that I related to. I find it really hard to relate to male identifying main characters, so there was that. And also the ending was not quite what I was wanting, but all of those factors considered, it's still a good book, just not the 5-star prediction I thought it was. I did have one nonfiction book on this list, and that was the memoir by Chanel Miller, which is called Know My Name. This is her story. She was a survivor of sexual assault. Her case was very highly popularized. I'm not going to say the name of her perpetrator because I just don't want to give him any more airtime, but I guarantee you've heard about it. It was a gross injustice. And I thought this would be a 5-star prediction because I love memoirs and I followed this news story very closely. I'd love to learn more about Chanel's story, but I didn't end up reading it this year. I had it planned for multiple reading vlogs, and every time I thought about picking it up, I actually have the audio. Every time I thought about starting it, it just felt a little too heavy. If you don't know, I'm a trauma therapist, so I deal with these kind of topics all day at work, and it's not something that I want to come home to and then take in my free time as well, especially because it's a real nonfiction story. I just don't know if I had the capacity for that this year with starting my practice and, you know, having to hold space for my clients, I'm always going to prioritize them over holding space for a book when I could read something fun and light and fictional. So I didn't get to this one, but when I do, I still believe that this will be a 5-star prediction. Next, let's move into my romance predictions. My first 5-star prediction for my romances was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I did get to this one in 2022 and I did rate it 5 stars. I love the concept of this book. It's about our main female character getting out of jail and wanting to go reconnect with her daughter, but her daughter has been adopted out to another family, and the family that she's with now has a lot of hesitancy about her getting to know her birth mom, obviously, but it comes with a lot of prejudice and a lot of personal trauma that our main character has to work through. And along the way, she falls in love with a local guy who has a relationship with her daughter. So he's kind of her in for rebuilding this relationship with her daughter. It is so emotional and so sweet. I love this kind of representation in this book. It's not a story that we hear about often, but Colleen Hoover specifically wrote this so any really type of woman could see themselves in this main character. She specifically said that she didn't give our main character any really specific characteristics. She didn't give the setting any typical place because she wanted all different types of women to be able to see their story in this one. And I just think that's a great concept for a romance. The emotions were well done, the development of the romance, and our main female character's personal development was well done. I cried at the end. I just think it was wonderful. I know that Colleen Hoover is very, very controversial and hotly contested, even though, the same girls that are saying all of those things were buying her out off the shelves when Book Talk first went crazy. So this is a bigger conversation about her in general, and obviously me liking this book doesn't mean that I like any of her other books because I actually hate quite a few of them, but this one for me, I predicted would be 5 stars, and it is. Next up, I predicted Hang the Moon by Alexandria Bellafleur was going to be 5 stars. This follows a guy and a bisexual woman, I believe, which was part of the reason why I wanted to name it as a 5-star prediction. Also, not the bi flag colors on the cover. That was a lot of what sucked me in, but I didn't end up getting to this one this year because I just was in a huge slump with romance. I would say the last 9 months of the year. After March, I barely read any romance at all, and I just didn't like a lot of the romance that I was reading either. It was kind of falling in the middle of the road. So I just didn't end up gravitating towards this one. I think if I do end up getting to it, when I'm in a romance mood, it could still be a 5-star. And the last romance 5-star prediction that I had on my list was Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which is kind of like a light enemies to lovers romance about 2 people who work in the book publishing industry who reconnect on a business trip and end up falling in love. This one fell victim to the same thing that Hang the Moon did, which is just that I fell into a huge romance slump. No romance was hitting for me, so I just didn't pick up a lot of it. I am actually really interested in getting to this one because historically I've given every other Emily Henry book 5 stars that I've read. So I still think this could be a 5-star prediction, and I'll definitely be reading it here in the next few months if and when I'm hoping that I get back into romance, because I really do miss the genre. I just haven't been called to pick it up at all. Now let's get into my last and biggest section of my 5-star predictions, which is, say it for me, thrillers. The rest of the books that I predicted would be 5 stars are all thrillers, one of which is YA, and that is Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. This book follows a group of teens who get involved with this kind of alternate dimension time travel scenario as they're trying to solve the murder mystery of their best friend. And I had said this was a 5-star prediction because of how much I enjoyed Night Film. Night Film by Marisha Pessl is one of my favorite books of all time. It does that balance between murder mystery, horror, and speculative magical realism perfectly, and I was hoping that the same would be true for Never World Awake. Unfortunately, it just didn't quite hit that way for me. I don't know if it was the YA characters, the half-baked romance, all of that stuff was not present in Night Film. I just think the YA style of it didn't hit for me. So I believe I rated this one 3 stars. I stick to that rating, but unfortunately did not live up to the 5-star prediction I thought it was going to be. Next up on my 5-star prediction list was Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. I mean, of course this was going to be on the list. I have loved so many of Karen Slaughter's books in the past. I haven't read too many of them, and most of the ones I have read have been the more recently published ones. So I've heard that there are a lot of issues with her older published books. I've kind of gotten away from reading her this year as I dip more into horror, but I can't wait to review that for you guys. So just know that I am aware of that, but this was on my 5-star prediction list. It is, well, it was a standalone, and now it has a follow-up, Girl Forgotten, which y'all know I really did not enjoy this year. And unfortunately, I didn't enjoy this one too much either. This was another one that I rated 3 stars because it was just way too long, okay? This story did not need to be this long, and it was really boring, which almost never happens to me when I read Karen Slaughter. Like Pretty Girls, I was invested from the word go. Same with The Good Daughter, same with False Witness. Like there's always this big punchy scene that I feel like kicks off a Karen Slaughter book, and it sets the pace and we just don't stop once that starts us off. But for Pieces of Her, it just fell a little flat. The shocking twists were not shocking. Like I would register it like, oh wow, oh my god, but it just didn't hit in the same way that a lot of her other books have for me. So unfortunately, this one did not meet the 5-star prediction that I made. Next up, we have Hostage by Claire McIntosh. I love a hostage story. I also love a moral dilemma kind of thriller, and that's how this one was pitched to me, so I put it as a 5-star prediction, and fortunately it was. I listened to this one on audio early in 2022 because I was so excited to get to it, and it did not let me down at all. It is about a hostage situation where a flight attendant gets passed a note mid-flight that says you can either save this whole plane full of people and we're gonna kill your daughter, or you have to help us sabotage the plane, kill everyone on board, and we will leave your daughter unharmed. It is that big, crazy moral dilemma type of situation that I love to read about in my thrillers, and I thought the commentary was done really well, but it didn't take away from the exciting thriller plot at all. So I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it, and I think this one's super underrated. I'm actually surprised that it ended up on my 5-star predictions list because I don't know where I would have gotten this hype from. Next up, we have For Better and Worse by Margot Hunt. And I rated this as a 5-star prediction because I had heard that it's really fast-paced, and it has one of my favorite tropes, which I have found out this year, that how far will you go for your family kind of thriller trope I love so much, and that's really what this book is based on. I did end up getting to it this year. I actually read it in a Reading My 5-Star Predictions reading vlog, so I will link that above and below for you if you missed that. And this reading experience was so fun. I did end up giving it 5 stars. This is one of the fastest paced thrillers I've ever read, and it really does ask the question, like, how far will you go for your family? It basically follows this married couple, and they find out that their son is possibly into something shady, and they will go to the ends of the earth to make sure that this secret doesn't get out. However, it has a lot of unintended consequences. The more and more that they try to fix it, it just keeps seeming like it's going more off the rails until the very end when everything just explodes. And this ending is crazy. I love this book so much. I'm so happy that I named it as a 5-star prediction because this is very unassuming. I don't know if I would have gotten to this one otherwise. So happy I did though. It was great. Another one that's super underrated. Next up, we have The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. Of course, this landed in my 5-star predictions because Ashley Winstead's 2021 thriller, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, was one of my top favorite books of last year. So I had thought that her next release was going to be another favorite of mine in 2022, and I was completely correct. This is, spoiler alert, going to be in my best books of 2022 video. I enjoyed this so much. Do be aware though of trigger warnings before you go into this book. I think a lot of people are rating this low because they don't understand the level of darkness and triggering material that's in here. So just be aware of that so you don't hurt the rating of the book just because this wasn't written for you. Because this follows some pretty extremely dark events. And it all starts with a woman listening to a true crime podcast in her little suburban home. She's just a little housewife. And on the podcast, her college roommate's story is being talked about, and everyone is saying that it's a suicide, but she always believed that it was something a little bit darker and a little bit deeper than that. So she goes and meets up with this podcast host, and they try to solve the mystery that happened in the past and how this stuff is being dredged back up now in the present. It is really dark. It really goes to those places that I need a thriller to go to. It is twisty. It is emotional. The commentary's there. It's an important story that needed to be told. And I just love it. I just think it's one of the most well-written thrillers I've ever read. And it's perfect. Okay, I will fight anyone who doesn't like this book. It's easily on my best of 2022 list. And I'm so glad that 2021 Hailey knew that as well. Now let's talk about Mr. Perfect by Linda Howard. Okay, so this one I put on this list because the premise sounded so unique and so interesting, and y'all know I'm always looking for more unique thrillers than just like a murdering, cheating spouse kind of a book. And unfortunately, this one did not reach up to the hype for me. I did end up reading it in that same 5-star prediction reading vlog, but I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I think this is the lowest, yeah, this is the lowest rated book of all of my 5-star predictions. This one was a total fail. And it's because the twist at the end was super problematic for me. It was really gross. It was written in the early 2000s, so it was pretty just like not aware of what it was doing at the time and didn't age well. I'll just put it like that. But if you're interested in the synopsis, I will give it to you. This follows a group of women who make a list of what the perfect man is, like who is Mr. Perfect. And it goes the early 2000s version of viral because it's a local news story. It was like a slow news day. And then someone is very triggered by this list and keeps picking off the women who made it one by one to teach these women a lesson. And I thought it was going to be like feminist themes, twisty ending, and it was really more of a cozy mystery with half-baked romance and a super problematic twist. Don't love it. Getting into my last couple predictions here, we have Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. 2021 was the year that I really realized my love for Jennifer Hillier books. I read almost her entire backlist in 2021. I have a soft spot for her, and I figured that her 2022 release would be a 5-star for me. It was. I read an extremely early copy of this book, and I really enjoyed it. I think I was one of the first people to give it 5 stars, which I feel like very cool that I get to say that. I know this was a controversial one. A lot of people didn't like this book this year, but I did end up giving it 5 stars because I was here for the drama. Okay, I feel like you have to go into this book, no thoughts, head empty, and just take it like you're reading a gossip magazine, like you're watching an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. If you go in with that mindset, I think you're really gonna enjoy it. You will give it 5 stars, no doubt. But if you're looking for a typical Jennifer Hillier twisty dark thriller, it's definitely not going to meet that typical level of darkness, I think, at least in my opinion. A lot of her previous works are quite a bit darker and twistier. This one was just like tea drama, tea drama, family secrets drama tea. We are following a young girl named Paris Peralta who wakes up one morning. She just like comes to in the very early morning and her husband is dead. And she is holding the straight razor that is believed to have killed him. So it's not looking great for Miss Paris. It's also not looking great that her husband was in his 80s and about to croak, and he's a very famous comedian with a lot of money that is now hers. This little young girl who is led out of their big mansion in bunny slippers and handcuffs covered in blood. So ridiculous, and she's extremely terrified of being on the news and being named a murderer, not only because of those implications, but because her past might be coming back to haunt her if she has this exposure being on the news. So we follow the secrets of her past and also the murder trial in the present. I love the way Jennifer Hillier always creates these morally gray, very nuanced, typically unlikable female characters. I love those type of female characters, so I was living for it. I support women's rights and wrongs, so I absolutely love this one. Easy 5-star. And the last 5-star prediction that 2021 Hailey gave me this year was The Plot by Jean Humph Korelitz. And I just read this one last week. I'm happy to report it was a 5-star book. I had put this one on this list because of all the hype it was getting at the very tail end of 2021. I feel like so many people were rating this 5 stars, but then throughout 2022, so many low reviews were coming in for this book, and low reviews from people that I trust. A lot of people were DNFing it or just giving it a very average rating, saying it's nothing to write home about. So I really put it off until just last week, but I'm so glad that I ended up getting to it because I did rate this book 5 stars. I don't know, maybe it's an unpopular opinion. Maybe my opinion just aligns more with the people who read it in the first round. I don't know. This plot just really appealed to me. Imagine that. The plot. It was all about the plot. We are following a literary professor who hears from a student the most perfect, mind-blowing, amazing plot that has never been done. And he's sitting there thinking, this kid doesn't even have to be a good writer. Like, this plot is gonna get published because it is that good. Then that student dies, and since he's the only person that he knows of that the student has told the plot to, he decides to write the book and publish it on his own. So he reaps all of this fame and money from this kid who is dead. And years later, someone comes out of the woodwork accusing him of what he did. So it's kind of like this blackmail plot. We are following that story in the present day, and then in alternating chapters, we're also getting to read this book with this crazy famous plot. I think this book has very similar vibes to something like Bunny, which I know is a very odd comparison that probably no one else would make, but I love the way that this book had a commentary on people in the literature world or just like in academia in general. Our main character is written as this over-the-top, almost camp version of a pretentious professor, and usually I would hate that perspective, but because it was written with such self-awareness, I loved it so much. It was just hilarious to me, and I almost enjoyed seeing this man squirm because I knew he just did this horrible, shitty thing, but at the same time, I was kind of rooting for him to get away with it. I don't know, it was a very weird juxtaposition, but it definitely kept me reading and kept me entertained. And I ended up giving it 5 stars, so it was effective. So that is going to be the end of my 5-star predictions checkup for 2022. I cannot wait to make my 2023 5-star predictions, so be on the lookout for that video in the new year. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and got a couple recs out of it. If you did and you liked this video, go ahead ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you in my next one.